Hey guys, we are live. I've got Jacob. Hey pal, I've never asked you, is it Swee? Is that how you pronounce it?
Swei.
Sway.
SW.
Okay.
Yeah, it's said it's pronounced. It looks like a Swee, but it's a Sway.
Okay. Good enough. I am just putting one thing here as a little ticker at the bottom here with
Okay.
your name.
So I take it we're not live at the moment. Is that right?
We're live.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. Just jump straight in. Like it. Straight into the frying pan.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm probably there's probably better ways of doing things, but I go straight to it. We are live. They catch every and every dumb thing I say just wide open when I'm live. So let's see, the Outspoken Engineer YouTube channel. Hey guys, we've already started, but we're gonna get started with the chat, the conversation in just a second. Special guest today is Jacob Swei. I'm saying it right now, and he is the host of the Outspoken Engineer YouTube channel. Please subscribe to his channel. He's located over in the UK, and I think I could be wrong on this, but from what I can tell, you guys are always a snapshot of the future for us, because it seems like the US is always a little behind on the new technology, new regulations we're always behind on, and we can always just kind of see what Europe is doing to see what we're going to be up against. So special guest is Jacob. If you want to, real quick, while I'm finishing this ticker at the bottom with your info, if you want to just go ahead and kind of share your background and so everybody can kind of get to know you.
Of course, yeah. So I got into the industry in 2006. Like a lot of people, it was relatively by chance, applying for a role which I wasn't qualified for. I was taken on as an apprentice. 9 years later, I got fully qualified. The company I was working with, so I'm a service and maintenance engineer. It wasn't predominantly installation. And I then went to school in the evenings. I did a foundation degree in facilities management. So that was me understanding building owners, facilities managers, and finding their needs and requirements. In the meantime, during that, I applied for the TV show The Apprentice, which I'm sure you've got in the States.
Yeah.
I got to the final 50 twice. I just wasn't the actor. And that was the motivation to say, you know what? The people that are on the show, they're not, they're great entertainers, and I wasn't the entertainer, but I knew what I was talking about. Fast forward 7 years later, we run an air conditioning mechanical business, carrying out residential. I think we're the biggest residential installer in the southeast of England, which is a nice achievement to have. We've got a great team of guys and girls, and we continue to grow. But we are, and myself, I like to say we position ourselves ahead of the curve, meaning we're always wanting to do things better, want to know quicker, faster, easier ways of doing things to benefit homeowners and building owners, and also, a bit of prediction into the future, because it can all help us to go in the right direction.
I like it. I think that's really cool. Little bit of trivia right there about your background. I think that's really cool.
That's my pitch, Josh.
So I'll just piggyback off of that. It's a long story, but the short version is, do you guys have 23andMe over in the UK?
We don't. What is it, Josh?
So it's basically a website that you can send your DNA, you swab the inside of your mouth and you send it in, and they do all kinds of things, like tell you if you're at risk for certain health things or your family is. But the main thing they do is they link you with other relatives. In fact, here in the States, they found a killer that way. There's a guy that was killing people in California years ago, and a couple years ago, they found one of his relatives on one of these websites, and they were able to figure out who the serial killer was, believe it or not. But anyway, all this, yeah, we've gotten off on a tangent.
I hope he's not relative, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I did 23andMe. I did the swab in my mouth. And to make a long story short, the man that my mom always thought was my father was not.
Oh, wow.
And yeah.
Okay.
And so I ended up finding out that my real father was not some jerk that my mom was married to. He was actually a really good guy that she had a party with one night, if you will.
Okay.
And
Okay.
yeah, and so what that led to was this whole new family that I have, and the long and short of this whole thing was I have family who have applied to be on Survivor and got
Okay.
very close.
Okay.
So a couple people that are in this new family of mine have applied to be on Survivor and gotten very close to being on that show. So that's
Right.
just so crazy about The Apprentice that you were telling me. That's nuts. So hey, now it's not too late. You never know. You might end up on that show.
I'm glad I didn't go on the show. I don't think it would have worked out. That's me sort of putting the knife in, saying we wouldn't have needed his investment. We're just doing fine on our own. Is it Kevin O'Leary in the States, right? Is it Kevin O'Leary or was that Shark Tank?
That's Shark Tank, which y'all call it the Den of the Dragons, right?
Dragon's Den, yes.
Dragon's Den.
Yeah, correct. Yes. Okay.
So I knew about Dragon's Den way before Shark Tank ever even launched in the States because it's such an interesting, show. But over here, I don't know who it is now. For a while, it was Donald Trump was the host, and then it was Arnold Schwarzenegger, and for I think a season or two. And I'm not sure. It's not a big show over here anymore.
Off topic slightly, but there's a if you get YouTubing or Googling, there's a lot of disputes between Lord Alan Sugar and Donald Trump because I think Donald Trump might have the rights. And there was a big confrontation on a TV show where Donald Trump basically made the accusation to say that Lord Sugar works for him. And, when you've got two kingpins like that, it was a clash of the titans. It's an interesting small clip to watch, but it's out there.
I can't imagine Donald Trump having a feud with anyone. He just, I can't imagine that. But anyway, so let me go from there. I know we've got a lot to talk about. The topic of our show today is bad HVAC contractors and some of their tactics. And I thought that would be a really cool, when you said that you would be on with me, I thought it would be really cool to talk about some of that because at least over here in the U.S., that is become the norm that a lot of contractors they've kind of given us a bad name, the industry, if you will, and they have, they're dishonest at times, and they've even done, they've had news channels do undercover stings where they go undercover and pretend to be a homeowner to catch contractors doing bad things. Yeah. So that's what we're going to talk about today, guys. If you are watching us, I was recently on Jacob's YouTube channel where we talked about some of the differences in the U.S. It looks to me like I'm frozen on my end. Do I look frozen on your end, Jacob?
Yes, indeed, yes.
Okay, well, that's fine. As long as they can hear me.
You're sitting very still, Josh.
But yeah, so on your channel, we talked a lot about, some of the differences in our countries as far as the heating and air industry goes. And we also talked about maybe the future a little bit. And I shared that video on my channel as well. I thought it was a really good, for me, it was fun, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I completely agree. I left that show, I left the conversation and I was elevated. It was great to speak to you. It was great to look at the differences because your industry is changing massively, and ours rightly is also. Just to add to the end of that show, we've recently had a proposal from the EU guidelines to ban any refrigerants January 2024 with a GWP of over 150. What that means is R32 will be gone if that is approved in the, I think it's the law courts or wherever they do it. So the proposal, Josh, is R290 and R600A, which is a propane. I don't know if you've got that out there at the moment. Josh. Okay, well, I think Josh is going to be back in a minute. If we are recording and we are still live, I just want to take a few points away from what's going to happen here. So I think the next conversation is going to be really important for if you're a contractor, if you're a building owner, if you're procuring air conditioning for your building or for your home, because I've got a strong feeling there's going to be huge similarities in what Josh is calling his bad contractors. Because Josh, you're back. I can't hear you at the moment.
Can you hear me now?
Fantastic.
Okay. Can you see me now?
Yeah, I can. So it was still saying it's recording and we might still be live. So I actually just sort of jumped in and kind of said, I've got a funny feeling that there is going to be what the outcome of this conversation with bad contractors is going to help the homeowner. It's going to help someone that works in a building looking at using the contractor, because I've got a strong feeling there is going to be a strong similarity in the in what a bad HVAC contractor consists of.
Yeah, I saw your video on that where you were talking about the new changes and so on. And well, I actually went back and watched your first two shows, but I've said it before and again, I think that you guys might be just showing what we're going to be going through very soon as well. So you guys always seem to be a little further along than we are in this, but I like that because I can kind of get an idea of what we're going to be up against.
Josh, a couple of moments ago when your camera faded out, did you pick up what I said about the January 2024 new legislation? So
I did. I didn't catch the refrigerant. You said y'all were going to be switching officially?
So R32 is what has been introduced the last few years, and it is the latest refrigerant, low GWP, and it does work really well for volume. So as a lower volume, it produces better efficiencies. However, there's been a proposal over the last few weeks by the EU. I'm not sure if it's something which is in court. But the suggestion is from January, and I know the UK is no longer part of the EU, but I think we're still going by this guideline at the moment. But the proposal is to ban all refrigerants in any system under 12 kilowatts, which I think in BTUs is about 26,000 BTUs. I think you work in tons in America, don't you?
What, both? Yeah. So
okay.
That would be essentially a 2-ton to us.
So R32 is 675 GWP. Anything below a 150 is an R600A or an R490, which is a propane. So we've got what you call refrigerators here on them gases. Are you dealing with propane at the moment?
We don't, but we have campgrounds in my area, and I have seen RVs or small trailers at these campgrounds that have propane as their refrigerant that cools the refrigerators.
Okay. And you mentioned in the last conversation we had that if for you to go from a split to multi-split in a certain state would be like retraining as an air conditioning engineer or HVAC engineer. I believe if that happens in the UK with this legislation, we'll need to be completely retrained on this because it is flammable, extremely flammable.
Oh yeah, and I tell you, just going to the A2L refrigerants like R32 in the States, because they're mildly flammable, people have been losing their mind. So now
a really interesting fact, Josh, unless this changed. So R32 being flammable is very questionable. Okay. Once upon a time, this might be current, so don't quote me on it. We can look it up. But R32 as an A2L is flammable in Europe and the UK, but it is not flammable in Japan.
Got it.
I think the difference is a sticker. They might have changed the regs, but the Japanese didn't declare it as flammable. It doesn't meet the criteria. So
interesting.
I'm not saying that I've sat there with a bottle of refrigerant and got the lighter out, but yeah.
Yeah, it's probably like a lot of other things. The conditions have to be perfect. It's sort of like diesel fuel, and I don't even know if y'all have diesel there anymore because you guys
are still just about.
But you can pour a gallon of diesel fuel on the ground and try to set it on fire, and you won't be able to. It has to be under pressure, and it has to be, the right conditions have to be met for it to actually, combust and or catch fire, really. And so anyway, yeah, that's very interesting. I tell you, I remember talking to an old timer, if you will. He's not that much older than me, but he's kind of an old soul, I guess, at one of our supply houses, and him telling me years ago, at least 5 to 10 years ago, yeah, someday we're going to be doing propane in all of our air conditioners. And of course, I was over there like, whatever, old man.
Yeah. He's sitting there somewhere saying, "I told you so, son. I told you so."
Yeah. Maybe he'll see this and give me a hard time. But that's crazy. So I know we kind of just exchanged a couple messages. I don't know how common what we're up against here in the States as far as dishonesty on contractors and things like that. How much you guys deal with that? Is that a thing over there?
So yes, to answer the sort of question of this about a bad HVAC contractor, I believe it falls into a few categories. One of them is workmanship. There is always bad workmanship in the UK. But you can have good workmanship and be a terrible contractor. And I would, as an example, you could do a fantastic job, but if there is a question to be answered by the customer and you do not get back to them within a week or 2 weeks, I would class that personally as terrible customer service. And that would class as a bad contractor. In addition to that, being sold the wrong product, as in a low budget product, and being charged, for a high-end Japanese product. We have that in the UK. We have Chinese brands, which are okay, but sometimes they're missold as Japanese brands and priced as Japanese brands. So there is a cost implementation for this.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah, go for it.
It's interesting that you bring that one up. I have a video that's going to be coming out over the next couple of days. There is a company that, in my opinion, now they might disagree, but they're certainly not doing anything on their side to correct this. And that is, a lot of people are under the impression that they are made in America. Now, is the owner of the company in America? Yes, but they're not made in America. And if you Google it, it literally comes up and says, made, it's here. And of course the company's here and the owner's here, but that's always been one of my problems with that particular brand, because they don't do anything to change anyone's mind or to set the record straight. And that's fine. They're allowed to do whatever they want, but I'm also allowed to call them out on that, which they have not been happy about in the past.
Is this the product, the person, the brand selling the equipment calling them out, or the contractor selling them?
This is me, Josh Griffin, calling them out, because if you Google it, where is this brand made? It comes up and says, oh, well, they're located in the US, but the products themselves are very far from being made in America. And again, it's not the company themselves that are saying, they don't have it on their website, this misinformation, but a lot of I've even seen people comment on their products in the reviews and say, I love their products because they're American made. And they're very misinformed on that. And I think that that's a little disingenuous, especially if they're not doing anything to set the record straight. Now, again, they're allowed to do whatever they want to, but in my mind, I think that's a little.
I can give you 2 examples which I think you will face with the split and multi-split market. So I can say this because it's the truth and it's not debranding anyone. But there was a Chinese product that's been out for years called Chigo, and you would buy these Chigo units from eBay. Customers would, but it'd have a Toshiba compressor. So it'd have Chigo air conditioning, but then it will say the word Toshiba compressor. And what we would do is we'd get homeowners ring this up saying, I've got a Toshiba unit which needs installing. Can you install it? Or we'd go to maintain a system which has been installed by a contractor and they've sold the product as Toshiba. But the difference between a Toshiba system and a Chigo system with a Toshiba rotary compressor is it's half the price. So there is a big difference in cost. In addition to that, Josh, which I think you may find, so Daikin, which I understand are quite big in America now. I think you said they bought out Goodman's.
Yes.
So Daikin had a product. It's not out anymore. They've changed the way they do things, but they used to have a range of system called the Siesta. And the Siesta range was made in Spain, and it wasn't really a Daikin product. It had a different remote controller, different everything, but it had the Daikin badge, and the outdoor unit looked like a Daikin-ish. Again, that was a third of the price of a normal multi-split unit. And what would happen is people would put them in server rooms or comms rooms, and they would only cool with an ambient temperature of below 16 degrees. So we'd get call outs in the winter saying the units wouldn't work properly because it would drop below 16 and the units would no longer cool. And the comms room has a large heat load. It would need the cooling load. So, but that would happen. So we'd have contract, and these units were cheap. Like, and I mean, they were like cheap. You would pay like 200, which would be like $250 for a system. Whereas a standard Daikin unit, a decent system, would be double the price. So that's changed now because Daikin, and especially Mitsubishi Electric, and a lot of the other brands, they bring out a low inverter product, which now is their brand, and it is Daikin, and it is Mitsubishi Electric, but it is made in a cheaper factory in a different part of the world. And that's how but it is a better system. But you may find this as you go to splits and multi-splits, that it's all on the model numbers. And it's frustrating, but this is always a telltale sign, in my opinion, of a bad contractor. They put in these cheap, low inverter units because they're short-term winners, long-term losers. They'll win a few short-term jobs. They'll change the company name, and you'll end up the reputation is a bad smell. And that's what these products are for. But the product is a telltale sign of a contractor.
Yeah, I've actually had this conversation, or at least very similar ones, with folks before, and more homeowners than contractors themselves. But I remember speaking to one particular gentleman and expressing some concerns similar to what you're saying, and him saying, "Well, I never really stay in a house longer than 2 to 5 years, so it's the next guy's problem. So I could care less." And I asked him, I was like, "Well, is that a good attitude to have?" And he's like, "I don't really care if it is or isn't a good attitude to have." But I'm totally with you on that,
Josh. We have customers like that, and I can be a little bit stubborn within myself to say them types of customers we will give a cheap product to. However, I kind of keep something inside to say they don't deserve the best. That attitude doesn't deserve the best product, and we never would sell them the best product. However, going back to what I was saying, Daikin and Mitsubishi Electric, I'm just using these two brands because they are the number one and number two in the UK. They're very smart because their low inverter, cheaper products are almost the same price as these low budget Chinese products, but we can offer them the same warranty. So there is a product now in the market, in the line, to cater for Mr. It's the next person's problem. Whereas many years ago, Josh, you would have to use a cheaper brand. Now you can actually use a better brand, we can offer a 10-year warranty on a Mitsubishi Electric system because we have the accreditation. We can offer their low inverter product. It makes us more competitive. They're cheaper product with a better warranty, even though it is the next guy's problem.
Yeah.
So, but what we have in the UK is changed slightly. But if we went back 3 to 4 years ago, that certain brands, I know in the UK and the US, it's slightly different because you have a lot of distributors and you are a bigger country, but you could unfortunately tell a bad contractor by the products they use. It's quite sad to say, but there are 1 or 2 brands which are now much better, but if you saw them products, you know what would come with the installation.
Yeah, that's a good point. I had not considered that, but yeah, you might be able to at least know a part of the story just based on that. What are they selling? That's a good point. I think unfortunately with a lot of homeowners, they don't always know what that bad brand is. So just because a contractor's selling that brand, maybe they don't really know that, oh, well, there's a red flag. Maybe.
Do you, Josh, do you have in the States, in the UK, we've which is good, and it is very good. It's very bad if you're no good at your job. But we have Checker Trade in the UK, and there is Trustpilot. And what these are review agencies. So if you were to put in HVAC contractor in the south of England, Checkatrade is like a number 1 or number 2. And basically Checkatrade is you can get any tradesman you want, and you can click on them. They have a review. They have a review. If you choose them, you can get work from them. Checkatrade sends you work. You do a good job. The client leaves you a review, and it becomes a hub for reviews. Trustpilot is the same, and it's a bit like the Google review, really. And that does help. That does help a lot. The only issue is with that is it can be falsified, and quite often you see that. And then again, looking at your homeowners, I would always say do your due diligence on the company. We've been trading for 7 years, and we're one of the only companies proudly to say that we've maintained a 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 feedback over 7 years. If you've been incorporated for 6 months and you've got 50 reviews with 10 stars, it's a massive red flag.
Yeah.
Do you have something like that in the States?
We have lots of things that they want to say that they are the place for that. We have the Better Business Bureau, for example. Do y'all have the Better Business Bureau over there?
No.
Okay, so it's probably this very similar to what you're describing. The Better Business Bureau likes to market themselves as a place that will do something about it if a business is doing something wrong. So people will even say something to the effect of, well, I'm going to report you to the Better Business Bureau. And in reality, if I'm being really honest, the Better Business Bureau might actually have an issue with this, but ultimately they're just a place where people can leave bad reviews. They will, if you make a complaint with them, they will try to resolve it in some way. But they've actually been sued because they have an accreditation program where they'll say they're BBB accredited businesses. Yeah. And they accept money at times for things that in the past people have said. I can't say, this is not me saying they are doing these things, but people saying that, they're being paid money and they'll give better reviews or represent the company better because they're being paid to do so. Probably, in my opinion, the best place for this and the most least biased place for this is probably Google still for us, because Google does a pretty good job of being unbiased on this, but they also, if the contractor is being attacked by, say, another contractor, then they will sometimes remove those reviews if they're not honest reviews from a customer. Not always, but I've seen some folks have a hard time getting reviews removed, but they at least have something in place for that. So,
it seems like there might be a great, humongous business opportunity in the States for somebody to open up a Checkatrade, because Checkatrade is I'd say 70%, 80% brilliant. There are a few others actually. I'm not going to name them in the UK because I could get into trouble, but there are a few similar sites which are where the bad tradesmen go. And whenever you come across bad work, it's usually because they found them on these sites. And again, it goes back to the client. It's the next person's problem. That's where they tend to shop.
Yeah. That's where I keep getting in trouble. You're smart enough to not share these names, and I'm usually name dropping, and people come after me.
I can sleep a bit better knowing that I'm not going to have some papers served. But the UK isn't as bad as the States for suing. So yeah, not yet anyway. And then in regards to obviously the after service. Appearance of engineers, and we're okay as a business, but dirty vans, dirty looking engineers, that's always a sign of a bad engineer, but it really, and then recommendation, if a client has approached a company and they're being surveyed by someone that quite clearly can't clean themselves in a dirty van, I wouldn't have thought you'd want to use them.
Yeah, this is tough for me because, Jacob, I have an employee that is an amazing person. He's very loyal. He's a great technician. By the way, we call them technicians here. An engineer is something totally different in our country.
Okay.
So my best friend is an engineer. He's I'm not sure if he's considered a civil engineer or what exactly it is, but here in America, engineers are typically people that sit behind a computer and make drawings. So
Oh,
like,
understood.
like an architect or would or whatever.
Okay.
But anyway, I have a technician. He's just a great guy and a great employee, but it does not matter how many times I threaten him. It doesn't matter how mean I am to him. He will not keep his van clean. And I know what you're saying, though. I think there's something to be said for somebody that takes pride in their work is probably going to take pride in keeping their van clean. But at the same time,
it's a different conversation. But technicians, as they're in the States, there is the technician that taught me was, I'd still say, one of the top 10 engineers that I've ever come across. A lot of respect for the guy. His people skills were diabolical. And he probably got 40 years experience. And you sort of think, is he the perfect engineer? He's not, but he could fix anything. And sometimes, you know what? I think I like the 80% rule. So if your technician that can't clean his vehicle, if he can get it 80% right for you, I think it's okay. If you sweat the small stuff, sometimes they won't do this. They won't do what they need to do.
Yeah.
There are different traits of good engineers. You have some engineers that are very good at talking, but then but technically aren't very good. You have all rounders, and unfortunately, you have some which are geniuses but stubborn as an old ox. So yeah, that's the joys of being an owner of a company and a manager.
That's
using
right.
your toolbox and understanding who's good at this and suiting them with the right customer and the right task in the hand. So,
yeah. Well, let me throw a couple at you that I've been up against, and I'm going to be fully transparent. Some of the items that I have to go over are they might be, what's the word I'm looking for? They might be debatable. They might depending on who you are and how you feel. In fact, you and I might not even agree on some of these, and that's okay.
yeah.
I have one here that has really, I'm just going to be completely honest. We have a company local to us, and I'm not saying it's the company. I'm not saying it's the owners of the company, but we've had some of their employees approach my employees to steal them or poach them, is what I call it.
Okay.
And here in America right now, finding good help is really hard to find these days. And so obviously I've taken issue with that. I've said, look, that that's not fun, but what can I really do about it? And
that's capitalism, I'm afraid, Josh.
Yeah, well, and I think that there is something to be said for, well, that's just business, or as you said, capitalism. I think that if I had an employee that was best friends with another heating and air technician in our area and said, hey man, I really like working here, you should come over, that is totally different than what I'm talking about.
Okay.
We were on a job site, or at least my employees were, I wasn't. And one of their employees in front of the customer walked right up to one of mine and said, man, I mean, our company's much better than yours. You should come work for us. And in my mind, it's very unprofessional, if nothing else. And again, that's why I said we may not even agree on these items, but
I think that like my opinion on that is for somebody to say, this is more of a general observation, in terms of people we meet all the time, using the words, insecurity and making people feel better than others and things, self-awareness. But for somebody to say to another person, we are better than you, it usually, someone who is great does not do that. It's a case of, the name of our company is Subcool FM. People in the area know that we're the best, and if we're not the best, we're aiming to be the best, because a lot of the competition, I believe, are shrinking, and they're not us. And that's my opinion, and I would be biased. However, I would never approach somebody to say, you need to work for us. We're the best company in the area. No way. They know we're the best company in the area, and they would want to apply for a job with us because they know we're a good, growing company, and we're highly reputable, and we have a reputation. But I can understand your frustration in that because, yeah, it's highly unprofessional, and I'd like to hope your technicians recognise the stupidity in doing that, and it's like a telltale sign of, damn, thank heavens I'm not working there.
I think that I've had some that felt that way and some that didn't, and I think that, again, this is not me going, oh, well, I'm insecure or I'm scared. I mean, I've told my wife a million times, if I had to go back to, I started out with a Jeep Wrangler. So when I started Griffin Air,
one of my favorite vehicles.
Yeah. Well, when I started Griffin Air, it was a Jeep. It was me.
TJ? Was it a TJ or was it a TJ model?
No, we just have the Wrangler here. I'm not sure what TJ is.
TJ was 1990 to 97.
Okay, no, this was a 2008.
Oh, nice.
So I had it was me, a Jeep, and a dream is what I used to say. And so I've said a million times, if we would, because my wife has always, she's always worried, this is going to happen. I say, look, if I got to go back to just me and the Jeep, we'll be okay. Right. So it's not about that. It's more about, I think from the homeowner standpoint, if I saw a company or employees of a company that thought that was okay, that would be a red flag to me. That would tell me the level of professionalism at that company is not high, that they think that this is appropriate to do in front of a customer. And if they think that's appropriate, what other things do they think are appropriate that are what am I really doing here? Who am I doing business with here? And yeah, that's kind of my take on it. If they steal my employees, they steal my employees. We'll be fine.
Is that direct competition with yourself? Is it what you would call a competitor?
Yeah. They're what they do is they're probably the biggest in the area as far as size of how many employees they have, but they offer more services. So we stay in our lane and we're the best at what we do. But they've taken the approach of, we're going to offer, plumbing, electrical, heating and air, septics, all the different things that they do.
I see. Okay. Yeah. So I arrogantly say we don't have any competition. We just have companies that do the same thing as us and think they're as good as us. Because I don't generally believe that anyone out near us is like us. But we did have a company in the area which I had to block on LinkedIn and on Facebook and on Instagram because the director was trolling us. And if any of my engineers are watching, I think they know who they are. And that's our sort of example to what kind of you've just had. But them sort of tactics are usually from companies which have taken their eye off the ball and they're feeling a bit sorry for themselves. But in regards to companies which do multiple trades, plumbing, heating, electrical, it's something that we're actually strongly getting into at the moment. Plumbing, heating, not so much electrical. And we're in a predicament where we either manage contractors to maintain our brand, or we look at taking on a small plumbing business with our branding and to sort of seek ownership. Because the challenge you have is companies get very greedy. And I've seen this, and you see reputation. You've been doing it since 2006. I've been doing it 2015. But it's a click of the fingers and your reputation is gone. Mm-hmm. And your reputation was gone because of a small plumbing job. And it would cost you thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. So it sounds like perhaps the gentleman that tried poaching your engineer is probably suffering with a lack of skill set in the business, hence the direct approach.
Yeah, possibly.
But for the homeowner, yeah, goodness me, that ain't good.
Yeah, absolutely. How about another one we have here is, let's see. Well, let me just go through this one. This is something we get a lot here in the States. I get people that comment on our YouTube, And I'm not sure how I feel about it 100%, but a lot of homeowners have told me how they feel about it. And that is they would like to see contractors itemize their billing or invoices better than they do, or break down their pricing more than they do.
Okay.
And sometimes I've been told that they feel like that they're receiving unfair pricing if the contractor does not. Now, I'm not saying all homeowners feel that way. I would say there's a good percentage of homeowners that just understand that things cost what they do, that a contractor is going to charge what he needs to charge to stay in business. I think part of it is a lack of education. Like, they just don't understand how much we all have to do with our continuing education and licensing and all the other things we have to do to keep the lights on, if you will. I guess they think if you own a heating and air business, you're driving a Bentley. But at the same time, folks want to feel like there's some transparency there. What are your thoughts on that?
We don't have that so much in a residential standpoint. So I'm not going to go too far into our quotes, but our quotes are quite clear. The description of the work is very clear. Locations are very clear. And it's usually taken off a survey that we've carried out. So that's one element. In regards to pricing, if we were to have a client ask us to break down our quote, we would. However, that would, to me, be a red flag. And it's usually a client wanting something extremely competitively priced. And I use the word cheap, because I'm going to give you a really good analogy, which a plumbing business sort of suggested to us recently. And this is something that you will share and I will share. Equipment that we purchase, we mark up. We put a percentage, 5%, 10%, 15%, 20%. Well, when a client says, well, I'm not paying for the markup, I'll buy it myself, we automatically would say, that's fine, but we'll still put a markup of 10% on your equipment. The homeowner would say, why? We're buying it. And then what we would say is, well, if that outdoor condenser isn't where you want it and the indoor evaporator is not hanging on the wall, what would happen if that unit would become damaged? We would pay for it and we would cover it if we had purchased. But if the client or the customer has purchased the equipment and we haven't marked it up, if that becomes damaged, it then becomes our problem and not their problem. So in regards to breakdown, it's I know it's a different market in the States over here, but for a homeowner to say, well, if they want a fair breakdown to labor, materials, and, sort of commissioning to sort of a handover procedure, I would say 100% fair. But for a homeowner to say, I want a shopping list of how much is the pipe work, the cabling, the drainage, for us, it's a massive red flag, because, we've all got to eat and we've all got to mark up our equipment, and we don't drive Rolls Royces or Bentleys, but, it really depends on the cost of things. If we're talking to something which is sub $2,000, I think a breakdown is irrelevant. The only time I think I would suggest for a breakdown is if I was to get 3 contractors quote and they're all highly different in price. That's the only time I'd want to understand it. But yeah, for us, it's a red flag. We don't really, we feel that we give enough information on the products, what we're doing, how we're doing it, and then there is a figure. We do if they ask for a discount, there are certain strategies that we have in place to deal with that. But a breakdown for us is never a good thing.
Yeah, I love your answer to that, and I'm not sure that would fly everywhere here in the U.S. There are certain markets that, whether it's because there's more competition or maybe they aren't so confident as you are at saying that, look, we're the best, so some contractors I've heard.
We don't, obviously that's it's something that's coming out of my mouth, but I would say as a company owner, as a company, we provide a package and a service, and you do the same. And the cost, there's a saying, it's a sales saying, but it's true. Cost is the price, value is everything. Value exceeds price. And that's the big thing that homeowners and consultants and building owners need to understand. The price you pay now is what you have, an asset in your house. It is part of your house, and the way it's put in is important. If you are looking for a breakdown and you want things to be as cheap as possible, that's fine. Pay peanuts, you get monkeys. There's a saying that we've got here. But value exceeds price.
I'm stealing that. You pay peanuts, you're gonna get monkeys. That's good.
Yeah, big saying in the UK. Big saying in the UK.
I think that ultimately my answer to this, especially when I'm helping homeowners, I help folks over at our website, New HVAC Guide, and I love what you said about getting multiple quotes. If you feel like there's something amiss or you are being taken advantage of, definitely get more than one quote. And I've told folks before. The other thing I'll say real quick is, you had mentioned that it's a little bit of a red flag. One thing that I've seen, especially helping folks on our guide, is when they want to see a breakdown. If the contractor says, well, I'm charging you $1,000 for this, I'm charging you $500 for that, and let's say that $500 is for digging a ditch for the new unit for one reason or another. Yes. And they may say, well, if that's then I want you to take that off of your bill, and I'll get my brother-in-law to dig that ditch.
For sure.
So it does become a red flag where I feel like contractors are probably saying, well, if you're going to nickel and dime me the entire time, I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to break it down for you. And some contractors just simply won't. They will not break it down, and you don't have to hire them, but they're just not going to do that.
Of course. And in regards to what I've said in the comment about the red flag, we've had a few instances and I think you get the frustration, and this is why we're talking now, and that's where we quote for work and the customer says, is that to supply the equipment, or is that to install the equipment? And you say, what? And they say, oh, we've had a quote, it's double the price. And I mean the difference between $4,000 and $8,000. And you go, what? They were going to charge you $8,000 for one unit or two units? They're thieves, what? That's where HVAC homeowners can cover themselves with the breakdown. So it's a bit of a contradiction in regards to what I'm saying, but unfortunately there are people out there that are chancers, and they will chance their luck.
I have to tell you, Jacob, the up to this point, until this came up, the chat here on the live was completely empty except for one comment. A guy was asking a question, and as soon as we started talking about this, we got looks like about 7 or 8 comments.
Oh, so fantastic.
Pretty cool.
Nice.
We're going to go through all these comments and questions at the end, because I feel like we're going to probably touch on a few more things before we wrap up. We've been on here, it seems like only 10 minutes, but we've been on here for 45 minutes already. Mm-hmm. So it's obviously a hot topic. A couple of people, it looked to me like a couple of people were saying, well, look, I still haven't found anyone good. Or one person here said, it took me 2 years to find someone that was good. And so, I think that especially when you're talking about this issue or any other, if somebody feels like they're being taken advantage of, then, you should shop around. It's okay to get more than one quote, Let's see. Another one here that, now I can't speak for the entire country. I can only speak for where we live and work in the state of Virginia here in the U.S. And that is, we have lots of individuals and or companies that will say that, and I don't know the verbiage over there, but here they call it licensed and insured. They have the proper licensing and the proper insurance. My thing with that is, a lot of them are lying.
Okay.
And they're not properly insured or properly licensed is the big one.
Okay. And
this is a hot topic. I've seen guys in social media groups on Facebook and things like that argue whether they should have to. Their argument is, this is how I feed my family. I should not have to be taxed on this. And, that's a whole nother topic, I think. But ultimately, I think most homeowners, if they do see on a business card that they're licensed and insured, unfortunately, a lot of them just assume that you can't print that on a business card if it's not true. And the other thing, now this is not true in all states. There are some states, Texas being one of them, that I've heard stories about, that they will put your butt in jail if you are doing things you're not licensed to do. But
that's great.
Here in the state of Virginia, that is not the case, or at least I've never heard of that. And the difference is if you have work done by a contractor not licensed to do what he's claiming to do,
Yeah.
you're the only way you can do anything about it is suing him at that point. Our local trade organization, they don't really, there's no policeman for that necessarily. And the last thing I'll say with all that is, because of all of that, a lot of homeowners are left out in the dark. And I've also heard horror stories where a judge in a court might even say to a homeowner, look, you're the one that hired someone not licensed to do this.
Okay.
So you're the one that is now, I'm not going to compensate you for hiring someone that's not licensed.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on this?
So I know in the States, this is from my girlfriend's parents living in Philadelphia, and I kind of understand that in the States, for you to be in a trade, you have to be licensed, and if you don't use someone that's licensed, it's a very bad idea. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. In the UK, we don't have that. In refrigeration and air conditioning or HVAC, we have in natural gas, we have gas safe, which is the training that you need to do and the license. And in refrigeration and air conditioning, we have something called F-gas. The sad thing is with our air conditioning side of things is you could be on a 2-week training course and become fully qualified in air conditioning with an F-gas license. So on paper, you can buy refrigerant and you can install and work on plant with refrigerant in, and this is all from a 2-week course. Unfortunately, there are still a few organizations out there. You pay them $2,000 and you get your papers and you are fully qualified, and it's becoming less, which is fantastic because there are less cowboys entering the industry. But in the, I'd say, mid-2000s, there was a lot of people doing that, and we have it with a lot of plumbers and sometimes electricians that they get asked to put a split or multi-split in and they think they can install it. So they go and put themselves in this 1 week or 2 week training course, and we end usually getting a phone call from someone asking for help, and we usually refuse. So it's tricky, and the reality is, though, is I've never been asked in the last 18 months for an F-gas certificate from a homeowner. So really, without being asked, we might not even have an F-gas certificate, which we obviously have, but it's something which clients don't check. The only thing that contradicts this, Josh, is going back to what I said about and websites with very good reviews. You just wouldn't have a good review or hundreds of good reviews without having an F-gas certificate. And unfortunately, it goes back to becoming a bad technician, because a bad technician will not have an F-gas certificate, and he probably won't have insurance, and he probably won't have good tools, and he probably won't have a clean van. He'd probably be working out of the back of a car. And he probably will be messy, and he will look like he's just come off the street. And he's probably rude, and he probably smokes cigarettes, and he's probably loud, and he probably swears. So you can package that stereotype with that, unless in America you have people that don't have licenses and look the part. Is that something that you deal with or you face?
Yeah, absolutely. I know of at least, I can literally right now rattle off a handful of contractors that have the words licensed and insured on their business cards. Okay. And I personally know that they're not. Partly because if I need a subcontractor to do something, and because I asked for it, unfortunately for homeowners, they're sometimes in this position where either A, they're not asking for it because they just assume people are good, or B, they're afraid they're going to scare away somebody that's good by asking, becoming a pain in their butt by asking for license and insurance and things like that. I feel for those folks because I kind of hear, I know what they're saying there,
It's something where, we started the conversation with, the States are a bit behind the UK in some elements. I think the markets are different, but they're actually becoming the same. And what I mean by that is when we started in 2015, we love residential HVAC because we love dealing with people. Sometimes in offices and commercial buildings, you don't get the thank yous and thank you very much. Really appreciate that. But cutting to the chase, the market in the UK has exploded residential wise. So if I was to say, if we were looking the next 5 years, Josh, I think I would. There will be naturally more unlicensed engineers in the UK doing installations, and I think we become more frustrated, like yourself, because you have such a big market out there.
Yeah.
I think the solution, I would say, would be, especially in the States at the moment, you could approach some of your competitors and maybe name and shame, or, you know, or start some kind of forum or something. And, you know, I think that would help.
Yeah, I'm not going to be that guy because
Okay.
I'm not tough enough. You know, they'll kick my butt. But
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Well, just okay.
I'm just chubby and weak, Jacob. You know, they'll see me down at the gas station and be like, "There's Josh. Let's get him."
You've got a UFC in the States, though. A couple of a couple of sessions in the evening. You know, that'll help. That's all you need.
I'll be on the news again.
We've got in the UK. You know, not that I'm condoning this, but we call some refrigeration tools attitude adjusters. So if you'd have a set of Stilsons or large adjustables, you know, an attitude adjuster is always the safety measure.
I love that. Well, listen, I've only gotten through half of the little topics or things that I could throw out there that bad contractors do, but we do have some questions here. If I could just keep you just a few minutes longer.
Yeah, for sure.
And let's see, the first question, this guy's asking us about a specific model thermostat. Mentioned something about integrate. Yeah. What does that mean? I'm confused on it. I'll have to come back to that and dig into those instructions. So unfortunately, I'm not going to answer that one right now. Where did you hear about the proposed ban on AC systems with GWP above 150 and systems under 12 kW?
So that person, if they want to jump on our YouTube channel or perhaps jump on LinkedIn, I'll send you the link to that, because it's not actually easy to be found because it's a proposal. So if you were to Google that, you wouldn't actually find it. So we were sent this by an air conditioning training center, and it's been proposed. So happy to get this across to you if you want to follow us, and I'll get something over to you. So
Rich, if you're still on here, definitely subscribe to Jacob's channel on that. This fella says, I have a 21-year-old 3-zone system, 5, 3, and 2.5 ton compressors. And then his question actually cut out. Oh, here he goes. I live in Southern California. Quotes of 60 grand to 75 grand for heat pumps or traditional AC with furnace. I'm wondering if I should just wait a couple of years for all to settle since all works well. Man, that's a tough question, Kent. Nobody knows the future. I think Jacob might agree that there's a chance with, the economy and everything that maybe we are on somewhat of a bubble, and maybe that bubble might pop. I have predicted on my channel that there are brands that or products that are going to hit our market and that are not even out right now that will disrupt it and maybe lower pricing or give you other options that are less expensive. But I mean, that's still just, me, making weird.
That seems a lot of money to me. I take it, are you talking about splits and multi-splits perhaps, Josh?
Well, he says he's in Southern California, and, I don't really know it definitely sounds like a lot of money to me, but that's one game I don't get into a lot because, if somebody lives in DC, New York, or LA, it's hard for me to say if prices are good or not because, they just simply have more overhead than I do. And, or there's always supply and demand. They can charge what they want to charge and then they stay busy enough. So
Ken Johnson did say, and my opinion on a lot of things is, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And the cost of $60,000 to $75,000, it might be inefficient and it might cost you a bit more in energy to use. But I think that's probably a good 10 years worth of fuel right there. That's my take.
And he says a couple years to settle. I think that right now with all the crazy changes coming through, things might actually settle. That is a valid concern or something that may actually happen.
Sure.
Crawford says, took me 2 years to find a honest, fair, good HVAC man. It was worth it. Crawford, share on our channel who that is. Feel free to plug them. And I have no problems with that. If you want to share how a good company on our channel and in what area they're in, that I'm totally fine with that. Chad says, I have to do stuff myself. There are too many ripoffs out there. What do you think of that, Jacob?
Sorry, say that again.
He says, I have to do everything myself because there's too many ripoffs out there.
Okay. Okay. That's sometimes, that's the saying, if you want something done properly, do it yourself. It's an old school way of doing things. I don't know. Maybe befriend a HVAC guy.
Yeah.
And get your HVAC guy to help you, your friend.
Yeah.
But if you've done it and it works well, hats off to you. Fair play for doing it.
I've always said it is what I do that hard to do. No, I genuinely don't think it's that hard. However, I don't think that just anyone can do it. I have friends that are electricians who will call me because they bought their own system and thought they could do what we do. They see heating and air just like any other appliance, and then they find out maybe that was a mistake. Let's see. I see a couple comments back and forth. Let's see. One of my quotes was 20. Yeah, so they're just chatting back and forth. Had a unit installed recently. The run cycle time is only about 8 minutes. It cools great. The humidity levels are at about 55%, which is pretty common for the Gulf. It is a 16 SEER 4-ton Energy Star system. Should I be concerned about the short run time or short run cycle time? That's a good question. I think it depends on, are we talking about a single stage 16 SEER? I would definitely have a pro take a second look, especially if you just had that system recently installed. I would have whoever installed it just make sure everything's okay. And, it definitely does. A lot of systems, it's not so much about the runtime as it is the cycles and such. I don't want to get into all this right now, but I think your thinking is good in that, you want that system to run longer, remove more humidity. But 55 doesn't really scare me, at least in my area. As long as you're below 60, that's usually the magic number, at least here. What about y'all, Jacob? Do y'all worry about that stuff?
No, humidity isn't that. We don't have humidity issues in the UK. In the summer, of course, the humidity is high, but anything below 60, anything below 50, we're always between sort of 35 and sort of 45 here. But I'm not too sure the system, what you're describing. I think it might be more, is it more of a furnace type? But if I was to extend the runtime of a system, you could drop the fan speed off the evaporator, because what you will lose efficiency though. But and also where is the thermostat that reads this? Because it might be positioned there's a few factors which need to be taken into account here.
Yeah, to be honest with you, 16 SEER isn't that high. So it's probably, I'm guessing just from reading this, it's a single stage system. So it's kicking on, it's cooling the home, and then it's turning off within 8 minutes. And I would say a lot of homes work that way, as long as it's correctly sized and whoever installed it did a proper heat load calculation. It's possible that it's working just fine. But you're right, lowering the airflow, lowering the fan speed is one thing that that pro might be able to do. TJ, I just think that we're just two guys, hooting and hollering here on YouTube. And you should definitely have your pro take a second look, especially if you do have humidity issues in there. We're still getting a few more questions. I'm just going to take one more. And that is, do you guys have Bosch over there, Jacob?
Yes. I've seen you put a video up recently about Bosch, haven't you? And I did put a comment. So Josh, we don't have Bosch in the UK at the moment. Well, we kind of did like a couple of years ago. what Bosch did was they bought a Chinese brand called Midea, and they bought a load of products into the UK, and they stuck a Bosch sticker on it. And then people see Bosch as, I think Bosch is a German brand, and they thought they were getting a German product. It goes back to what we started this conversation on. And it's not. It was a Chinese product. But Bosch has disappeared now, and I'm sure it will come back in a year or two, but it's gone. But Bosch in the States, is that more of a bigger brand?
So here in the States, there is in my opinion, what appears to be a huge shift with a lot of brands. So Bosch was the first that I saw, and they did the same thing. But let me not pigeonhole them quite so much. So Bosch is what you just said, right? They're originally a German brand, and I assume some of their products come out of Germany. But if we're talking about just the air source heat pumps,
yeah,
they did exactly what you said. They they're manufactured by Midea. At least that's what I've been told. And they slapped a Bosch sticker on them, and they put Mitsubishi compressors on them.
Interesting.
Since then, that has changed. Their newer products do not have Mitsubishi compressors, but the way it would work is, unlike a lot of other inverter systems, and this gets to the question that Sam asked, a lot of other inverter systems can ramp up and down and use communicating technology similar to a mini split, and the units can talk to one another. The outdoor unit can tell the indoor unit, hey, it's really hot out here, we need to ramp up, and so on. So the technology that Bosch brought to the table was, at least with their original system. Now, since then, they've come out with some variable speed stuff and so on. But the original idea was, with this Mitsubishi compressor, they would say, the outdoor unit is going to measure the subcool or the temperature of the suction line coming back and ramp up and down based on that and that alone. Okay. And it's an interesting technology. Full transparency. When they first came out, I put one in my house. I was like, sweet, 18 SEER system at the same price point as a single stage system. And I put one in my house. And I do think it's definitely possible that that's the way the industry could go, at least on the lower end systems, because as they continue to say, oh, the minimum has to be 15 SEER, or now it's SEER 2, and the minimum has to be 16 SEER 2 years later, and it continues to go up, you're going to see lower end brands have non-communicating technology, but still an inverter system to meet those SEER requirements. Ultimately, what's happened is, at least with some of their systems, is they're seeing a humidity issues because the system, the outdoor unit does not care about anything other than what that temperature is coming back. And so they're seeing humidity issues, and there's a couple things that you can do to and that was his question. Why is it an issue? Well, that's the issue, that it doesn't care about anything else other than, I need to keep this temperature coming back at this temperature that you have it set at. And it doesn't care about anything else. It doesn't care about airflow. It doesn't care about anything.
Understood. So it's basic control. It's basic control.
Right.
So has Bosch in these states changed at all to become more advanced, or is it simple tech? They've
opened the product line a little bit now, to where now they have 3 options, where they have a 15, 18, and I think a 20 SEER. But the way they're meeting those efficiencies is not changing technology. It's still the same inverter stuff, but then they might have only a ECM motor inside instead of a full variable speed, or vice versa. It's still, I believe, still a Midea product, and that's okay as long as you know that. That's the whole thing. People are always like, oh, why is it so bad? Why are you always pointing out that it's made in China? Well, we can go back and forth on whether that is or isn't a good thing, but my whole thing is, just be honest about it. And as long as they're being honest and everybody's in the know, then fine. But finally, the main thing to answer Sam's question, why is this an issue? I think part of it is because the technology is different than just about anything else right now. Just about anything else. We've now seen Gree has a product very similar to it, the Gree Flex, which I'm going to do a video on again. I've already done one, but we're going to do another one because I'm going to take their press.
Just to introduce Gree, I didn't realize Gree was in the States, but Gree is a Chinese brand.
Absolutely. That's the largest Chinese brand.
And Gree, a couple of years ago, did a deal with Daikin. So in China, all Gree split air conditioning units have Daikin inverter compressors and inverter compressor technology. Is that the same in the States?
No. Now they did do it, as you said, they did do a deal together, but I don't know where that overlaps here in the States, so I don't want to say something that's untrue. But I do know that everything that I've laid hands on that's Daikin is made by Daikin. I don't see enough Gree to answer your question on that. We've probably installed a handful.
I look forward to seeing your Gree video. I believe it's going to be very similar to the Bosch, where the control is just poor. That's all it is. It's poor. I don't want to say poor. It's out of date. It goes back to the question of what the HVAC homeowner wants. If you want better control, and maybe they've been misinformed, but if you want to cool a room down, to answer the gentleman's question with the Bosch system, it's working. But the control strategy on that system isn't advanced enough to control humidity. It is an on and off, really, isn't it? With a variable speed compressor, it's staged. I think you're going to see in the States the inverter technology changing rapidly, because we have digital inverters, we have hyper inverters, elite inverters, and they all work at such a range of frequencies. The only thing is, which contradicts everything here, I was told by, going back to the old guy that was sitting down in the chair telling you about the propanes.
Right.
Well, I had a guy like that once, and he said to me, Jacob, you need to understand one thing. An inverter compressor is more efficient running at a higher speed or a fixed speed hard. It likes to work hard, and it likes to work more freely. An inverter compressor running at a very low speed actually consumes more electricity because it struggles to maintain. It needs energy to maintain a low speed. So, without me giving the official figures, because I don't know them, it'd be really good to strap an energy meter on these units and to see if that old man in the chair was right.
During the making of this video, I have no desire to sell that product currently. Who knows? I don't want to say that I'll never sell that product.
They're getting much better, Josh, and also, Midea in the UK, the products, we don't do them. But they are getting much better. And, off aircon for a moment, but one thing that Chinese were known badly for in the 90s and the 2000s is poor quality control. And I know we have a lot of air source heat pumps out here, and I've heard through the grapevine from a few of my contacts that the heat pumps, which are Chinese brands, are still terrible with quality control. However, some of the bigger brands in China are so smart, and what they've done is they've taken European and American expertise, and they've got them to steer the ship in the States to maintain quality control. So I believe, I'm sure you've got the same view in the States, the Chinese takeover, but there is a reason why they're getting better, and it's because they're outsourcing expertise.
Yeah, and it kind of gets back to Bosch, right? So whether someone in Germany at Bosch actually created this technology, I don't know, but they've obviously outsourced the making of the product to Midea, and I'll put one in my own house, so I don't completely 100% think everything from that's imported is horrible. But the last, I just want to answer his question and just say that without getting into dew point and all these crazy things we can talk about, the main thing of this is when you're cooling a space, you can cool it faster than if you cool it too fast, then you haven't ran long enough to remove enough humidity. And that's okay if you have a dehumidifier. But if you don't, that's why you see people, they'll say, well, I had this system and then I replaced it and now I'm having humidity issues. It's simply a matter of you're cooling it too fast. So with Bosch in particular, that particular product, I would say some of the things I would focus on is ductwork sizing, airflow. You can adjust the airflow down. And you can also, at least with some of their products, there are dip switches that you can change to make it run with a cooler coil. And so I think that's ultimately, hopefully answers your question. But yeah, that's interesting. Again, I don't have any, I have no desire to install that GREE product currently, but I'm excited to go to this class, hear what they have to say and see. It's funny. You were kind of talking about GREE there. There are people that will fight you on my YouTube channel if you say anything bad about GREE. I learned that
Really?
because they're starting to get a following here in America.
It depends on the desire. Again, I don't want to use the word arrogance. I want to use the word confidence. Okay, as a contractor, we want to put the best products in, and that's period. And if using the brand GREE, if GREE's efficiencies aren't as good as Daikin's or Mitsubishi Electric or a Japanese competitor, I personally won't put it in because I feel like we're not making the world a better place. But if somebody wants to fight the brand, it goes back to why one brand is better than another brand. But if it's not as efficient and it costs more to run than another brand, that is a strong argument not to use the product, whether it's GREE or a Bosch product. But GREE using a Daikin compressor is very smart because it increases the efficiency. We see it with cars. We have Aston Martin, which is a British car manufacturer, using a Mercedes engine. And the loyalists say, how dare Aston Martin put a Mercedes engine and destroy the product? But Aston have done it because they have one of the best V8 engines out there. And why develop, an Aston Martin engine, which will never be the Merc engine? Let's just make the Aston cool. You'll have some people slate it and you'll have some people which will go with it. But again, debating is great because we all learn. But if you're being slated for saying bad things about a GREE product, maybe they should try a Mitzi product or a Daikin product and maybe they can change their views.
So I'll wrap up with that. I will say Mitsubishi or Daikin or even GREE, they did not sponsor this. They did not pay Jacob to say that. Although, if you want to reach out to us, Jacob will gladly take your money, Mitsubishi. Just send him a check and he'll appreciate it.
Josh, we're gonna make money in the next life. We've decided this life all about content and helping everyone. We're gonna make money in our next life.
There you go. Well, for anyone seeing this, I'm trying to do this every Friday. I already know I have some Fridays coming up that I will not be able to do this again. That I won't be able to do this, but as many Fridays as I can, I'm going to do a live, share what's going on. Some weeks we're going to talk about new things to the market. And then some weeks we're going to talk about some of the deeper things like Jacob and I did today. But I've already got another guest lined up to do something similar to this. And Jacob, if you're interested, we would love to have you on again. I think that me personally, I just love hearing the differences in our two countries. And also, as I've said before, you guys seem to be a little quicker to the table with a lot of these things. And I like hearing about that.
Of course. No, I really appreciate it, Josh. And we're sort of taking what we've done together, and we're going to Australia next. So we're gonna go for HVAC Australia, and then what will be amazing is it'll be good to sit down around the room because Australia are actually way ahead of the UK in a lot of things.
Really?
So
nice.
Yeah, Daikin in Australia is the number one. So I think it'll be really good to get an Australian alternative to us. and I think a lot will learn, and we'll get a lot out of them. So
yeah, I love that. If you're in Australia and you happen to come across this, we'd love to talk to you, and maybe we can do this, the three of us. Last thing I'll say, if you've caught this, please subscribe to both of our channels. Jacob's channel is called The Outspoken Engineer, and he's got a really cool format where they're basically doing a show every week. And then, of course, my format is I just get on here and show my fat face, and I like to make people mad by sharing things that they don't want to be shared. So that's kind of become my thing. But anyway, thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe buttons on both channels. And Jacob, we are going to do this again if you want to be back on, because we've got tons of stuff to talk about.
For sure.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
You take care.